Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. Is it morning for you? Where are you
Good,
at?
good late afternoon. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm
Okay,
in Vienna, Austria.
Austria.
So closer to dinner than to lunch.
Yeah, my meetings are all early morning, so my normal routine is I get up, I go to my meetings, I work for a little bit, and then I take a long nap, and then I work a little bit more.
Hey, Chad.
Hi, Darva. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for picking up that MR for us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was on those, the performance ones, like the previous all hands on deck when I didn't know anything about my way around the metrics, but I've I've learned a little bit more now to be able to dig into these things. But I just asked for some more help on exactly what we're trying to fix, because I like to do that before any performance improvements.
Oh, opportunity for growth wins again.
Good. So I am right now starting our live stream. I'm not sure why this is not working. And of course, I'm not capable to stream it live to YouTube. Good. The wonderful word of permissions. I will simply take the recording afterwards and put it on GitLab unfiltered, as this doesn't seem to work right away. I'm not able to log in with GitLab unfiltered. Good. Hello, everybody, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, or good day, as someone already mentioned, for the APEC inclusiveness. Very happy to welcome everybody to today's development group conversation that I'm hosting today, as Christopher is currently out on jury duty, and I hope you had already some time to take a look at the slides and or the pre-video. And I even see that we already have a couple of questions in the agenda. So we will get started on those and then simply take it from there and hopefully add your other questions in the meantime. So let's get started. Victor, you had the first question. Can you verbalize this one? If Victor is on the call. If not, then I'm going ahead by verbalizing. The question was, do we have any data about how engineers feel with all the engineering allocations and infra dev issues going on? I see that the current retention numbers are beautiful and would like to make sure that they stay similar. Yes, we would also love to have the numbers stay at that level. They are really good at the moment on a very high level retention-wise. And what do I think about how the teams react to it? I think it's a really important topic to take ownership of your area from everyone included. So this starts from everyone who is involved into the quad process of developing something. And this means also really that you take ownership of your area. And the worst thing that can happen to your area or to your group topics that you're responsible for is that they don't work, that they have create outages, that they explode, that they are causing some incidents. And I believe this is to some extent like keeping your small backyard that you are responsible for. And one of those topics is for sure that I strongly believe that engineers have a high ownership in their areas. So they want to have that stuff perform reliable and fast. And I believe that seeing how as soon as people are assigned to a topic, this is also can be very interesting and sometimes very challenging topics, which makes engineers also interested even more to some extent. So this means that engineering allocation, seeing what happened in an incident, as it's not that easy that you can relate a one-to-one thing between something that happened and what the cause of it was. So that is definitely something that I think entertains and excites also engineers. And then the biggest and best outcome that you can have is that if you see charts that were going completely through the roof for months performance-wise and were spiking out CPUs left and right and seeing those drop to an absolute minimum or non-existent, then these are huge rewards, I would say. So I think that's exactly the topics that we are also trying to prepare engineers for, to motivate them around that it's really everything that we invest into that is a huge improvement for GitLab.com, for our users, for the users that are using self-managed, because normally every performance or reliability improvement that is right now rather targeted .com is of course adding huge benefits also to self-managed, because we are making something faster, we're making it more reliable. And as we are seeing so much growth, especially over the last months and years, this also simply means that if we are implementing a feature, if we are deploying something to production, this is like landing in a huge river, which is flowing in some areas faster, in some areas a little bit slower. But this really means that we need to think, especially for the future, what we can do better, because features are used immediately, even in seconds or minutes per thousands and even sometimes millions of users in a couple of hours. So anything that you drop there, which is not performing, which is not reliable, will cause problems for the users. And coming back to being a little bit selfish also to ourselves, because I mean, who likes it when something is down or when something that you just wanted to do is not working? And that's another topic that we need to pull out of those info-dev issues. Is what we don't want is to repeat our mistakes or problems that are bubbling up, which means simply that it's really up also to the ICs and engineering managers to come up with strategies, suggestions, what are things that we can do better in the future that we are not landing there again. And this can go from anything from reducing technical debt, which is a super wide term, but we are looking also into that, about alerting and monitoring, over to know how we, there's another course, Postgres course just was announced, over to really learning how to work in such a scalability sensitive environment that we have now with .com. And that's, I believe, where we are trying to have everyone focused on improving that situation. And I believe that our teams and our engineers, and seeing how they handle in such a great way such incidents, is something that they really like to work on and making that better. So there is one addition from Jorn. Looking at this forum from the security side, I really welcome that focus on the security backlog. Yes, we want to burn down this, and we are increasing even our focus and also the people that we have on this topic to really burn down security topics, especially in managed access, as they are the most landing in, because they are responsible for authentication and authorization. So this means a lot of stuff lands there. But this is definitely something we are currently investing more to have the time that we get to zero on that end, get this time to zero from some further time out rather to in the next 3 months. And that is something we are also investing in. I get that security issue fixing is a very specific topic, but I think there is also some really interesting technical topics, some also long-term strategy goals that we can set to not get into some situations and basically make our software more bulletproof and harden some ends and improve some processes. So I think that's also not just about fixing that specific issue, but also having that take of ownership of maybe a team that is not really reliable for that, but coming together and pulling together to make the whole on a global perspective better, I think is a great target, and seeing how everyone is invested in it is something really nice to see. Any additional questions on that topic? No, then I'm moving on. Olivier, you had the next question, and I saw you already in the call. Yes, there you are. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. About slide 7, about the LCP KPI, we're mentioning to lower the target between 1.5 and 1 second in the near future. I'm curious if this is a general statement for all the pages, because the graph that we display there is just about the project on page performance, but we look at the leaderboard and Grafana, we can see that I say more than 50%, it's more about 2/3 of the pages that are above that target. So I think we should consider maybe an adjustable target depending on the page, because some definitely might need more time and they might look more acceptable to take a longer time to display the information, like loading a large blob, for instance. And I'm also a bit worried about the fact that we are getting more metric centric and trying to make them a bit more toothy. So if we just drop the bar on that target, this will add another red metric for several groups. And I wonder if you go that route, if we should highlight the priority of this kind of performance improvement versus all the others, like your budget, for instance.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And this was one of the suggestions coming out of a key review. But as I'm very heavily deep down in that topic, there are a couple of topics that have been already discussed, and originally it was some of the focus points, especially for me personally, to look into Q3, where we want to focus on next. We had a very clear focus in Q2 to reduce the overall number of routes that have good LCP. So just as a short explanation, LCP means largest contentful paint. This means like when is the biggest element on the page painted, which is something that is currently called Web Vitals, which is becoming the industry norm at the moment for loading performance. So this means when is the page ready and feels ready that you actually can interact with. Google is basically suggesting a target of 2.5 seconds, which is also the target that we had. So we are using those industry standard metrics. They even started to take this into consideration for their search algorithm. So it's even playing some part of SEO, but the main topic is really a user perception of performance. So they did a lot of research on it, what is perceived fast and what not. And the guidance is everything below 2.5 is good. Now comes really a question, should we rather focus on that part? So the actual KPI that we currently have on the LCP is around the explore page, which is one of the most standard pages. It's one of the rawest pages, so there's not too much going on, which is loading additionally. So it gives us a really nice baseline. It dropped by a lot, but as you mentioned, we have some more complex. Just talking about the web ID, we are loading a lot of things. We are doing a lot of things there. So this is rather way more complex. One thing that I suggested in the last key review meeting was also that we are rather looking what we did now in the last quarter is to take a look at all the routes that we are measuring. And I think it's 115 or so at the moment that we are measuring every 4 hours on gitlab.com. That goes from issue details to boards to security reports to a lot of different things. We hope that it's a quite good mapping across all the areas of the product, and simply take the amount of pages that are in the good, medium, and bad sector and get them all to good. So that this is rather the target, because the user experience is most of the time not if this page loads now 1.8 or 1.9 seconds, but is rather I'm visiting 20 pages, and if one of them is super slow and takes me 20 seconds, what will you remember? Most probably rather the 20-second page. And that's where we want to get to, that it feels more average. Coming back to it, there are also a couple of other topics like hot cache, which is something that we rather measure against that, because right now we are measuring everything against cold cache. So this means this is simulating a user who is coming for the first time ever with their browser to one of those pages. It's not a consecutive visit. So this is rather a classic website loading metric. So this might be also something that we switch. Quality is already testing with hot cache. We have our outside statistic runner who is doing hot cache, etc. So this might be also something. And then LCP drops automatically because most of the stuff is anyhow cached, and we just keep some of the metrics with cold cache. There is also one more thing that we are looking, and we hope to get this also in the next quarter, which is the working group around front-end observability. We are trying to upgrade Sentry, and that would give us automatically out of the box performance metrics by real user metrics, and highlighting if they go bad or worse in that sense, and with full stack traces from that user. So we can really go back in time and say, okay, this page, this user had on this page a very bad experience. What did he call? What was happening on that page? And we basically see it like we see the error reports in Sentry. We see also like those performance reports, which would be a really great feature to have, not just synthetic measuring, but also the real world measuring. And one last thing, which is also something we're looking very detailed into, is right now everything is about loading metrics. Loading is nice. Loading is super important, because if it doesn't get to your screen, you can't interact with it, and it's the first thing you start always. But what users will perceive as fast or slow is, on one hand, the loading. The next thing is reliability, if that thing always loads, if it's sometimes slow, etc. And on the third part is the interaction with it. If I'm clicking on a new issue button, how long does it take? If I'm going to a project, I click. So we have currently one workflow where we tested this out. So you land on the project homepage, you go to directories D, click on a file, go back, click on another file. How long does the whole thing take? And if we are making improvements, how much were we able to improve through this whole process? Because this is much more like a simulated customer interaction rather than load, thank you, you loaded, well done, and measure rather that. And that's, I believe, where we are heading to, what are some way more metrics that we can measure with exact timings, where we can work against, and that we can improve to really improve the end user reliability and usability and user experience, and not just some loading metrics.
Thanks. I really like the latest proposal. Do you expect that to be a per group approach, like asking every group to come up with a workflow that is related to their feature, or are we looking more at a very company-wide initiative that will come down to each group as if one of their product areas end up into one of the workflows that have been defined there?
Yes, I see this currently from two directions. One thing that we are working on the front-end observability working group right now, together with also operations, and Andrew is, for example, is on that, is really to get SLAs not only to backend but also to front-end and have really measurement, and that would be something we can provide from one point to everyone and simply backfill this into error budgets, have clear error budgets, not just backend or front or one group, but rather have backend and front end separated, and can basically provide direct feedback there, not just on errors, but also on app scores and stuff like that. And the other thing is really providing some sort of tooling, some sort of infrastructure like we have with the site speed setup, to extend that basically and say, okay, look, this is how you can do and measure such a workflow. And now you need to go into the first step was easy there. You just added some URLs and it's starting to measure. And now you basically need to write a little bit of a script, and we will try to do and some testing and start with 3-4 workflows, figure out what we learn from it, improve that everyone basically has a really easy access to it, a nice toolkit, and then educate. And then it's up to the groups to learn more, measure more. Where we started right now is the GDK, because we are in heavy development of a complete new version of the code repository browser, how it works, and how it's loading stuff in the background. And there we wanted to know the first state and the end state. And that's exactly where we started, so that you can simulate the same thing in the GDK at the moment locally, which already makes a really nice improvement, I would say.
Right, thanks. Looking forward to it.
You're very welcome. Chad, you had the next one.
Sure, thanks. I was encouraged to see the focus on tech debt, and even possibly taking large chunks of time for tech debt. But on large, mature, complex products like GitLab, which is what I've worked on most of my career, there's no end of tech debt. It never ends. It's something you live with. And the idea is to prioritize it. You know, is this something that I want to take on? And the danger is often people are, you know, the tech debt that they choose to work on in absence of anything, you know, specific or intentional, is whatever they're familiar with or whatever is the thing bothering them the most, which is not necessarily the highest criteria of tech debt. And so this is, and I have this algorithm that goes through my head every time, like, is this a hill I want to die on? Is this something I mentioned? And it's like, is this security? Is it like link customer data? Could it get us on the front page of Hacker News? How annoying is it? Even if it only wastes 5 minutes, does it make me hate my life? And all of these other things of whether this is important and whether I even mention it or not. And so this is a good start, but there's other things also subtly that I think people miss. For example, you know, even if it's a little thing and it isn't necessarily in support of a feature, if it's just really annoying and you have to deal with it every single day, even if it only takes 2 minutes, that impacts other extremely important metrics: retention, employee morale, and these are all, you know, lagging symptoms of tech debt and how we address it and how well we prioritize it. So we're very metrics driven about everything. I would love to see us inject more of that around tech debt in GitLab, and interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that is a really good thought of putting metrics to it, and I'm more than happy to see any sort of proposal around that. And what we were looking into right now at the moment is to stop it, that we are ingesting more and more and more and more and more, and how, especially looking at incident related topics, are there any patterns that we can stop right now or that we can prevent? Or a good example is, for example, that what we are looking into is, do we need any sort of sign off by engineering that all loose ends are tied before something is basically kept to itself working in production? Or this can also happen during product feature development, that suddenly a feature is cancelled, you are moved off of it and it's simply put on ice, but the queries are there or the feature flag and it's in production and it's happening. And I think we need some gates that we need to define or figure out, maybe around feature flags and removal, and have some processes in place that engineers have the saying on, look, this is done, I'm happy with it, I can go to sleep at night because my thing was just deployed to production, it works nicely, it's running. I think we don't need to do anything else to keep it alive, and that is not disturbing, and that's where we need to get to. And this might also impact already the state of when something was done, the merge request is merged, that is there anything to remind engineers, for example, to check 24 hours, 3 days later, statistics, error reports, error budgets, everything. So you know, okay, this happened, this landed in production, and that you basically get automatically pings on the MR. Is that something that would help and basically reduce that amount so that engineers, and I think it's really important that everyone is aware, please raise your hand in such situations where you believe, okay, we are moving already our focus to somewhere else, but I think there is a lot of thin ice over there. And if there are too many people running over it, then this might break. And this is some sort of focus and also shift on how we are looking at things, for sure. And there are tons of those examples, I believe, but really on figuring out what is the technical depth that we have around. And right now, the main focus is definitely on reliability. But I can totally get if we are having other areas that are simply painful to work with, that are risky, in the sense I was running over something a couple of weeks ago where there is simply an old pattern, and this old pattern is repeated because people see how it was done in the first place and they do it even a year later, but it was currently already replaced by something else. How can we put harder gates in there that no one is, even if this thing is running and it's okay, but it shouldn't be followed up and shouldn't be repeated, that we make sure that no one is repeating that thing, and how we can prevent those things. And we will be opening up the floor for sure on those discussions very, very soon, as soon as we have done the first infra dev action on it, and basically proceed and iterate from there, how we can really get to a state where we have it under control and it doesn't get into areas where it's explode, because you have so many options how to get out of it, either by refactoring, replacing complete areas, and so on and so on. So, but yeah, metrics, all for it.
Cool, thanks for the answer. Yeah, it's a fight against entropy. You're never going to get rid of it completely. It's just, can you manage it within some guidelines? Thanks.
Very welcome. Any other questions? Nope. Then thanks a lot for attending. Thanks a lot for the questions. I hope you all have a great rest of your day and rest of your week. And most of you I will see anyhow in some other meetings this week. So take care, everybody.